The 2026 Chevy Equinox is more than an SUV. It's your Sunday tailgate and your parking lot snack bar. Your lucky jersey, your chairs, and your big cooler fit perfectly in your even bigger cargo space. And when it's go time, your 11.3-inch diagonal touchscreen's got the playbook, the playlist, and the tech to stay a step ahead. It's more than an SUV. It's your Equinox. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. This ain't just a show. This is a platform. Veteran built, battle tested. Welcome to the Misfit Nation. Yeah! In a room, built from boots on the ground, now we breaking the rules. 2 vets, 1 leader, painting the sound, turn scars into sermons, let them echo around. Authors with truth, musicians with fire, actors backstage chasing something higher. Entrepreneurs bleeding just to get ahead. If you fought for your dream, yeah, you are what you said. If they told you no, if you still came back, if you fell to your knees but you stayed on track, this is your voice, this is your flame. Say it loud, remember the name. No salvation, just elevation. We rise again. From the fight to the end. We are the Misfit Nation. No damn labels, no damn cages. If you're still breathing, you belong. Turn it up. This is our song. Yeah. This is our song. Yeah. Veterans standing with ghosts in the chest. First responders running in while the world second guess. Gold star names carved deep in the soul. Your story ain't over, we carry the whole. Coaches teaching mindset, breaking the chain, turning barely alive into owning the pain. Truth over polish, scars on display. If it's real, let it bleed. That's the misstep way. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. If it's heavy right now, and the dark feels cold. It's Aubrey right now. We're the more than you know. 9888, don't walk alone. Veterans press 1, bring it home. Don't trade forever for tonight. You're still needed in this fight. We're the Misfit Nation, built from scars and dedication. We rise again. From the fight to the end. We are the Misfit Nation. Every voice is fabrication. From the silence to the scream, we're strong. Welcome home, you belong. You belong. You belong. Oh wait, you. Oh wait, you belong.
All right. Welcome to April, ToosDay Crüe. It's that time to flip the page. Shake off the dust. April's here. Those showers are coming. A brand new month, a fresh runway, and another chance to crank that energy all the way up. Spring is waking up. The days are getting longer, and the momentum is building, which means it's time for the crew to step on the gas and bring that fire to a whole new level. No coasting, no slowing down. April is about progress, purpose, and pushing forward to everything you got. So, Steven, Jake, Let's shake off whatever's left from last month and light this place up. Misfit Nation is here. The mics are hot. The energy is ready. Misfits, get loud and welcome the voices of grits, resilience, and straight up ToosDay Crüe chaos. Steven and Jake, the ToosDay Crüe.
And good evening. How you doing, Steven? Yeah. Lots and lots of chaos. Lots. Hey, if you're tuning in tonight, we'd like to welcome you to this week's edition of the ToosDay Crüe. And Steven, how was your day today?
You're very good, thank you. How about yours?
It was wonderful. Spent the day just doing what I wanted to do. Currently out in Oklahoma visiting family. Came out here for Easter, and we got that celebrated. And we're just out here relaxing and really not doing much. Mrs. Holland spent the day antiquing, so she was very, very happy about that. Got a lot of nice, good stuff.
So it's like you being at work. You're just hanging out doing nothing. I like that. That's pretty damn good.
Hey, I did change a set of fuel filters today. So, yeah. So there, yeah, we got that.
That's fantastic.
So what do we got on board for tonight?
Tonight, I don't know. We're just going to hang out. We're going to talk. We're going to BS, and we're going to get the show, going like this. Okay?
All right. Well, who we got coming on tonight?
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, sorry. Tonight, we got a guest whose journey proves something we talk about a lot on this show. Sometimes the hardest battles don't happen on the battlefield. They happen after the uniform comes off. Our guest tonight is Garret Biss, retired United States Navy Marine Corps pilot, TEDx speaker, addiction recovery coach, and a man who has turned his darkest moments into a mission to help others on their way back.
And Garret spent years flying for the Marine Corps. He was part of one of the most respected fighting forces on the planet. But like a lot of veterans, when that chapter closed in 2015, a new and unexpected fight began. And, we're talking about anxiety, depression, and just like a lot of us, a loss of identity. And it's the internal battle that far too many veterans face when structure and purpose of military life disappears. And like many people trying to cope with that transition, he turned to alcohol and eventually found himself facing thoughts no one should have to face alone.
Yeah, but here's where the story takes a powerful turn. Instead of letting the darkness win, Garret found himself something that changed everything: mentorship, self-worth, and rediscovering the strengths that were already inside him. That journey didn't just help him recover, it gave him a new mission. Today, Garret helps veterans reclaim their identity and purpose through his program, ValiantPath, using positive psychology, coaching, and real conversations to help people move out of survival, but into their highest potential.
And he also delivered a powerful TEDx talk, and we're gonna talk about how you can get that and watch it. I watched it. It is powerful. It is very powerful, and it's called Unspoken Trauma. And co-founded a recovery residence. He's written books, continues to serve through organizations helping veterans, communities around the world. But tonight, we're not here for the highlight reel. We're going to be here for the real story. We are going to talk to him and get him to talk about some of this stuff. And that's what we're going to do.
So buckle up. We're in for a conversation about identity, recovery, purpose, and what it really takes to rebuild your life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Let's bring him in. Garret Biss, welcome to the ToosDay Crüe.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate this. Appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate this platform that you guys have provided. Great to have meaningful conversations, share some insight, and hopefully share some hope and some inspiration for individuals that like many veterans, have gone through a unique struggle, unique transition challenge. So I'm excited to dig into that and share some things I've learned, and maybe learn some things from you if you have any insight to share. I'm excited for that.
All right. Well, hey, we can sure share it. we can definitely do that. Now, we gave a little bit about, we say that you was a retired Marine Corps pilot, and a little bit of what you're doing now. Why don't you just tell the rest of the Misfit Nation, start from wherever you want to start and what got us to where we are here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, I appreciate it. So I started, I guess the more important part of the story, that transition from military service. So unfortunately, and I've later come to describe this as fortunately, which we can unpack that. But unfortunately, when I transitioned from the Marine Corps, I had a similar experience to what a lot of veterans face. When we look at the veteran population, it's a population that has at least 200% greater risk for mental health challenges, for addiction or substance challenges, at least 58% greater risk for self-inflicted wounds or suicide. And sadly, not too long into my transition experience, I realized I had become a statistic. I was dealing with some of the mental health battles, the anxiety and panic attacks, struggling with some symptoms of depression. And then as I share, so quick spoiler alert, so as I share my TEDx talk, some things really began to change for me when I fortunately had an experience of suicidal ideations, that I had kind of a moment of clarity and I had an opportunity to make a decision and make some changes. And then that really kind of scared me awake in a way, kind of caught my attention to the point where it said, hey, something's going on here. You've obviously been neglecting or avoiding or numbing certain things, and it's obviously not headed in a good direction. So around that time, I was also fortunately introduced to some coaching and mentoring that wasn't intended to. I wasn't going out seeking help for the mental health challenges or the substance challenges. I was just seeking some answers, trying to seek some clarity. Like there's got to be a path out of this darkness. There's got to be some things that can be helpful in this journey. And what I was turned on to was some coaching and some programming in positive psychology, and the opportunity to work with a mentor who helped me begin to rebuild the void, or begin to fill that void inside that I was experiencing after I transitioned from the military. And the shortest version of the TEDx talk is what I share, and what I've truly come to believe and understand is that regardless of what a veteran experiences while they're in the military, that transition from military service itself can be and is often a traumatic experience for the veteran. When we realize how military service in many ways provides the way that we meet our most basic fundamental human needs for mental and emotional well-being. As humans, we have the same biological needs as all other animals out there for food, water, and shelter. But as humans, we also have some unique human needs that are necessary for that emotional and mental well-being. And fundamentally, we have a need for connection. We have this need to be part of a group, to be part of a tribe, to have a sense of belonging. With that need for belonging, we also have a need for authenticity or a positive self-identity. We need to see ourselves in a way that we're worthy of and deserving of the connections that we cultivate. And lastly, we have this real profound need for a sense of meaning in our life. What I've come to understand, that the role of meaning in our life is that it really is what provides our capacity to endure some of the struggles or the challenges that we might face. So if you look at that transition from military service and the loss of the way that somebody has come to meet these basic human needs, that in and of itself is a traumatic experience. And it leads a lot of veterans who don't understand that, or who don't catch it quickly enough and begin to rebuild that foundation for their mental and emotional wellness, catches a lot of veterans off guard. And we see at the extreme ends where we're seeing the suicide rates that unfortunately continue to increase. We see the rates of veterans struggling with very severe mental health challenges, struggling with addiction, not able to find treatment solutions that can help them out of their situation. But that's really at the extreme. What I suspect is that most veterans are really experiencing a post-service life that is not really up to the potential or really up to the level that they imagine for themselves and that they really desire. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing now, is helping veterans understand that transition, understand the root of some of the challenges that they're facing, and then most importantly, helping them regain that foundation for their mental and emotional well-being, so that they can really live into their life and experience the version of their life that they desire, and that they absolutely deserve. I mean, anybody who stepped forward to serve our country or to serve a cause so much greater than themselves, they deserve to have the opportunity and the resources and the support to experience the best version of their life after that service.
Yeah, and finding purpose, finding, I guess, another community, another family, and, you know, finding that support system. You have to find that, or like you said, you're just gonna continue going down. Now, I listened to your TEDx talk, and I come away with 3 or 4 things here that I kind of wanted to comment on and ask you about, and just kind of expound on them a little bit, if you don't mind.
Let's do it. It was a very that was one of the most difficult talks I've ever given. They say, you know, if you give me an hour or 2 hours, I can have a great conversation. Doesn't take much to prepare. But if you fix me to 10 minutes and you give me a certain word count, that was the most challenging thing. So I certainly appreciate an opportunity to dig into a little bit of what I touched on briefly in the TED Talk.
You looked like you were standing in front of a firing squad when you was up there, but you handled it real good.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even remember. I don't recall the experience at all. I rehearsed it for it so much. And then I just got, I don't know, I just zoned out somewhere and stood up there and delivered a talk. And later after that, I was standing back in the green room talking to other speakers, and I was like, hold on, did I go yet? Is it my turn next? They're like, no, man, you already went. You went like two guys ago.
Yeah.
So, very unique experience.
First comment I want to make on it is your beard is coming in very nice.
Well, thank you. Man, there was one joke that I was encouraged to take out of it. I was going to say, I don't know if they make Rogaine for the face, but if they do, it's something I might like to try. Because I don't cut it. I don't cut it at all. I mean, every once in a while I'll take some of the longer whiskers, but this is all I've been able to grow in. So I don't know if I got to like blow against my finger and try to force it out, but that's about all I'm getting here. I'm very jealous of the long, 6-inch beards that a lot of people grow.
And I can go.
If I go a week without shaving, I look like a homeless man on the street.
You and me both, brother. You and me both. There was, okay, first of all, when you had your friend over and having the bravery, the sense of self, and knowing where you were at that time, to have them go get your pistol and take out of your house. That was powerful. I mean, that hit me.
Yeah. I also recognize that I was very fortunate to have that kind of relationship and have an opportunity where I could have somebody help me out in that way and not have to describe it, not have to explain anything about what was going on. And I think, I wish that for anybody who's in that situation, that they find an opportunity to make a decisive action with the support of somebody else, and yet feel comfortable enough that they don't have to fully explain what's happening. They don't have to justify it. They just have to ask somebody to do something, and they go do it. And that's really the kind of connection that we're used to in the military, right? Like there's so many things that we would do for somebody just because they ask for us to do it, or we might just show up and begin to, to support them in a certain way for all the things that we know about them or can suspect about them that they don't have to express with words. That's really how I understand like a real deep and profound sense of belonging or sense of connection. So I was fortunate that I had that opportunity. I don't, who knows what the path or journey forward would have looked like had I not.
Yeah. And another thing, you probably knew when you asked it, there would be no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I'm sure that, a lot of people probably feel, they don't say something, they don't do something because there's not going to be any judgment, or that there might be judgment, or, what's this person going to think of me if I do this? But to have somebody that close and to be able to do that really hit me. And that's an amazing story right there.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And another thing that you mentioned that hit me pretty hard was I think you were talking to somebody that it was a Holocaust survivor, or you were talking about a Holocaust survivor, and they stated that suffering ceases to be suffering once it has meaning.
Right, and that's from the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, and he's the father or the founder of the field of study called logotherapy, which is the study of a person's will towards meaning. And one of the things that, and this is where I said that I've really become to appreciate that a sense of meaning and purpose in our life is really a profound need that we have, because this is in some ways what provides our capacity to endure suffering. So I understand that we as humans, like we're built to struggle. We really thrive when we're struggling, when there's something difficult at hand and there's some challenge before us that really requires all of our skill set, all of our energy, all of our attention. We really thrive when we have something that we can struggle against. And what I learned through his work was that if there's not some meaning associated with that endeavor, with that experience, then really it's experienced as suffering. So I understand the difference between suffering and struggling is whether or not there's some meaning associated with it. And this is something that I think is really important to understand, not just the loss of that connection or the positive identity, but when anybody, and my greatest focus is on the service member that transitioned and becomes a veteran, but I understand this to be true to some degree with anybody that goes through a major transition and loses the sense of purpose that they had in their life. This could be, empty nesters that are now, trying to find a new way. So anybody that retires from a major profession that provided a profound sense of meaning. But what I understand is that this sense of meaning provides our capacity to endure suffering. And this is really important to understand what veterans. One of the things that I was contemplating and that a lot of veterans kind of struggle with is realizing that they don't feel like they're able to perform or live up to some of the obstacles and challenges that they're facing. But it's a little disconcerting, or it's a little hard to wrap your head around, because even while you're in the service, you're living, you're going through the human experience. You're facing challenges in your life. You're struggling with finances. You're struggling with relationships. You might be struggling with some health challenges. So you have all the normal challenges and obstacles of life, yet while you're in that uniform or while you're in the service, you tend to have a greater capacity to overcome some of those challenges and continue to march forward. Well, now you take somebody out of the service, they lose that sense of connection and the safety and the security that comes from that. They lose that sense of meaning, which provides context and that capacity to endure some of that struggle. And now the same things, the same life experiences might come up, yet now they don't feel like they're capable, or they've lost that capacity in order to deal with some of those challenges. And one of the examples that I often share is, to illustrate this difference between having a sense of meaning or not, if you can imagine waking up some morning and all of a sudden you find yourself, your heart is racing, you're sweating profusely, you're short of breath, your muscles begin to burn, and you just notice that these symptoms, they seem to come out of nowhere. You don't know what's causing it. It'll last for 45 minutes or an hour, and then it goes away. And then sometime later in the week, it comes back, and it keeps repeating itself for a couple of times a week. Well, you can imagine how disconcerting that would be, how much fear and anxiety that would create in your life, just having this experience that you're suffering through, and you have no connection to what it means for you. Like, what's the context? What's the meaning or the value of this in your life? Now take those exact same symptoms, your heart's racing, you're sweating, you're short of breath, your muscles are burning, and put yourself in the context of now you're in a weight room, now you're exercising, now you're working out. Same symptoms, same physiological experience, but because you have a meaning for those symptoms and that experience, now it's not only something that doesn't create anxiety or fear, it's not even something that you want to avoid, but you might even invite that sensation a couple of times a week. That's the difference between suffering through an experience with no meaning or experiencing the same thing, but having a sense of meaning or a profound sense of meaning behind it. It provides that capacity for you to not only endure it, but voluntarily invite it upon yourself multiple times.
Yes. And I found myself when I first got out doing things that put me in situations that I really shouldn't be put in just to make myself feel that way. Right. And I have found out how to do that differently now, which is probably more healthy for me. As a matter of fact, I know it is, and doesn't scare Mrs. Holland as much.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, there is a unique thing. There's no denying it that veterans we're really cut from a different piece of cloth. Service members and veterans. There's some things that are unique about us. In fact, that's why I understand that there's even the term veteran exists, because they recognize that once you've been through that experience, you're never going to be a civilian again. Some fundamental things have changed about you, the way, the values, the beliefs you have, the perspective that you have, the way you carry yourself or see things. You're never going to be the same that you were before that experience. There's also some other interesting traits with that transition, or with this new kind of sense of self, that make the journey, for those that have struggled with a substance or struggle with a behavior, it makes the journey beyond that struggle also unique. And this is one of the things I think creates a lot of challenges for those veterans that are seeking treatment or that go and try to find support. If they go and find a program that wasn't designed or developed with the veteran and the veteran experience in mind, then many times what they receive, the value, the support they receive, doesn't really map to their experience. Therefore, it's not as helpful as it could be for somebody else, because there's some unique things about veterans. I was talking to a veteran recovery coach and a mentor at a treatment court the other day, and he pointed out that when we understand pain, or the motivation to stop doing something that's creating pain in your life, most people, if they're experiencing pain and you've helped them find out how to stop experiencing that, then they'll do that. Like the example that he gave was, if somebody sticks their hand in a blender and you turn the blender on and it creates significant pain, that person's naturally going to pull their hand out of it right away. So, but there's something unique about veterans and our propensity toward wanting and inviting pain and inviting suffering at some times, because of the experience that we've had with it. Can't remember how many times I've heard that pain is just weakness leaving the body. It's a nice little slogan or a catchphrase, but really in some ways we become, we become designed, or we have this like desire to lean into discomfort at sometimes. There's kind of the one way to understand or to explain this, something that I've realized, this relationship that we have in our mind, the vocabulary relationship that we have in our mind between suffering and the value that we have as an individual. So I understand that, a society at large, and then certainly within the military, when we think about those service members that we really revere and respect the most often people will talk about the special operators, whether the SEALs or the Rangers or the Marine Recon, as those that are most revered in the service. And one of the things that we revere, that we really respect about them, is that it's well known that through their training and through their selection process, they have to demonstrate that they can endure tremendous amount of discomfort and suffering, and yet they can still perform. They can go, they can hike 100 miles. They can go days or weeks without food. They can go with very little sleep, and yet they can still perform. And really, to a lesser degree, I think all of us in the service, we've recognized that we've been through some things that are a little bit more difficult than other individuals. Some of the training that we designed to be very difficult and to make us experience suffering so that we learn how to perform despite it. Well, the challenge is that this also can create this idea in our mind that somehow our value as a service member or our value as an individual is somehow correlated with the amount of suffering that we can endure. So this can be a major barrier to these veterans or an individual that begins to suffer more than they're used to in their own life and can't find a way to navigate out of it. It can be a major barrier to seeking help or to raising your hand and saying, hey, I need some help here. Because in some ways we can internalize this suffering, and our ability to endure that suffering is somehow representative of our value. And then if we admit that we can't endure the suffering, we might interpret that as though we're admitting that somehow we're not as valuable as we thought we were. So there's a lot of kind of nuanced differences in the mindset, in the character, in the beliefs, and the value system that veterans have that create some unique challenges with them seeking that help. And this is what I think reflects in that the statistics that I mentioned earlier about the rates of mental health and substance challenges.
Yeah, and you're talking about the suffering. I don't know how long or how old you are, but I remember when you talk about suffering. When I first joined the military, if you weren't suffering, you weren't a good soldier. Well, hey, first sergeant, I need to go to sick call, and immediately right there,
right.
It's like, you don't need to do that. Suffer through it. And
right.
I think we're just we're mentally taught that by our.
And I understand the value in the context and in a certain situation. Like I understand why they tried to instill that into us, because If you get a cold or you got a little flu when you're forward deployed and there's a mission in front of you, you've got to be comfortable enough with yourself that you can live through that. So I understand where it serves a purpose. And I also understand how devastating that can be and how much we need to unpack and retrain that, because if these same belief systems carry forward, then we got guys that are accepting more and more rocks in their rucksack, and they're trying to carry much more through life than what they should before they ever seek help.
Yeah. Plus, I don't want a guy coughing up a lung while I'm laying in an ambush. So,
right.
This is from We the People. Go ahead, Stephen.
From our friend on TikTok, We the People Veteran, tonight whispers a simple truth. Depression you're becoming is shaped most by choices no one sees. Very true.
Very true.
Absolutely.
And I think we got to, and pain doesn't hurt. Dalton, 1989. Yes.
Yeah. And Nina Barnes on Facebook said, did the depression felt by service members worse when they removed themselves, worsen as they removed themselves completely from the tribe?
I'd say certainly, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So let me gather some mental notes so we can unpack this a little bit. So for one, we as humans, we are biologically hardwired for connection. There's many natural functions that happen in our body that require a sense of connection. It's even our capacity to regulate emotions. So when we do things that are pro-connection or pro-social, simple activities like laughing together with somebody, embracing somebody in a hug, experiencing something new with somebody else that you feel comfortable with. These are all activities that one of the things they do is it releases oxytocin in our body. You might have heard of oxytocin as like the love hormone or the bonding chemical, but one major benefit of oxytocin is that it also activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps us process and reduce the cortisol and the adrenaline that build up in our body. This is one of the reasons that we really need connection in order to be able to function. Also, as tribal creatures, it's wired into us that we need to be part of a tribe. So, it's no secret that we are not the fastest, we are not the strongest animals on this planet, yet we seem to be the apex animal on this planet. The things that we can do when we come together with a group are just as, magnificent today. But if you think tens of thousands of years ago in a hunter-gatherer tribe or in a small community, you needed to be connected to that community in order to meet your own basic needs for survival. To get food, to get water, to have shelter, to have somebody protect your back while you're sleeping or while you're taking care of something. You needed connection in order to be able to facilitate your survival. So this is still very ingrained and hardwired into us. And one of the worst implications is for somebody when they feel like they've lost that sense of connection. One of the things is it puts them in a survival state. It really puts them in that fight or flight state. They've lost the mechanism for which they can feel safety and security, and they've lost the mechanism for which they can easily regulate their emotions. When we're in a survival state, when we're in this fight or flight state, or when we're in this triggered state, one of the things that it does is it changes our lens of perspective. So if you imagine you have a zoom lens on a camera, and when you're calm and settled and you feel safe and secure, your zoom lens is wide open. You can see the entire landscape in front of you. You can see all the good and beautiful things in your life, all the things that you're grateful for. And you can also see some things that might be potential hazards. Once you're in that fight or flight state, one of the things our brain does to protect our survival is it alters our perception so that we really zoom in on something that can become a potential threat. This can be potential threats beyond us, potential threats in the environment. It could be obstacles that we're facing, some challenges that we're going through in our life. Those become at the forefront of our mind and can really cloud our ability to perceive anything else. It also identifies and highlights threats that we see within us. So the defects that we have, the weaknesses that we have, the things that we feel guilt over, shame over, these things really come to the surface. And now our whole perception or perspective is defined by these negative aspects. Now, this isn't like a sick and twisted thing that our mind does in order to punish us. It's really something that's done in order to protect us. Because if you're in that survival state, if you're in that fight or flight state, you need to be able to identify anything that's a potential threat. Just like if you're sitting in a public space and you're enjoying a nice conversation with somebody and all of a sudden the lights go out, There might still be some music playing on the radio or on a piano. There might still be some nice smells from the cafe that you're sitting near. But all of a sudden in the survival state, you're not able to experience any of that. You're only able to listen for any sounds that might be indicative of a certain threat. So I mention all this because we can understand how if all you can perceive are the negative things around you, this is naturally going to increase your internal sense of anxiety. You know, you're really in this heightened state and carrying a lot of extra anxiety as you're navigating any of these challenges. So I do believe that there's a very strong correlation between anxiety and depression. One of the things that was most helpful for me was being told that to think of depression not as a noun, but as a verb. Thinking of depression as your body's natural reaction to overstimulation. Really, your body begins to slow down. You become disengaged as a protective mechanism to bring you back into that homeostasis or back into your zone of tolerance. But it can manifest as a lack of engagement, a lack of interest. Really, you're in the survival state trying to conserve energy. So yes, for all that was a very long response to yes. When somebody loses their tribe, it can absolutely exacerbate their feelings or their symptoms of depression. And since I mentioned its relationship with anxiety, one of the things that I've learned that's been so helpful is when I've had episodes of that depression, when I feel like I don't have enough energy to even stand up or get up out of bed or go do something. It's been really helpful to have that context because I understand that I don't need to find all of the energy that I need to go outside and walk around or, change the scenery or go exercise. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming. It's like, I don't have energy to get out of bed. How am I going to go exercise? But once I understood that it was my body's natural mechanism of depressing my central nervous system in order to deal with that anxiety, well, then I realized, I don't need that much energy. I just need enough energy to start some action, to start some motion, do 5 minutes of exercise to begin to burn down some of that extra anxious energy so that my body can take off this like internal emergency brake that is stuck trying to protect me from that stimulus.
Okay. I like that. You don't have to you just have to have enough energy to get that initial movement. And I like that. Right. I'm going to have to put that into some practice.
I got another question for you.
All right, Stephen.
Big E, little D wants to know, Garrett, when you first left the Marine Corps, what was the hardest part about losing your identity? Thanks for
great question. Thank you for asking. So I think one thing was, a lot of different things to unpack here as well. So one way that I look at that transition from the service is like a second adolescence. So when we think of adolescence, we think of individuals that are 18 or 20 years old that are leaving the home for the first time. They go out into the world. They've got to begin to understand, develop some values and beliefs about who they are, about their place in the world, about what's valuable to them. I think the same is very true for somebody transitioning from the service, but we don't often think of somebody in their 30s or 40s going through another adolescence. But in many ways, you have to re-find who you are. You have to understand the new environment and the ways that things work in this new environment that you're a part of. So that was a major challenge. And this is something that fuels that anxiety. Like it's very much like there was a great article. I think it was a MOA article that was published recently. I'll try to find it if you want to share it in the comments or the show notes. But it talked about it's very similar to being cast off into a foreign land where you don't speak the language, you don't know the customs, you don't know your way around the city. That's very much what it can feel like when you transition from the service. The hardest part for me was experiencing this internal void, knowing that something was missing, knowing that something didn't feel like it was in alignment, something wasn't right, but not having any understanding of where that void and where that pain was coming from. Kind of back to the exercise analogy. If you or I were to go for a very hard workout today, or we went for a long run and we woke up tomorrow morning and we were sore, it would make perfect sense to us why we were sore. We would know that it was our body repairing itself. And therefore we would also know that in a couple of days, that soreness will go away and everything will be fine. Well, if you woke up in the morning and you felt that same pain in your body, but you had no idea where it came from, it can be very hard to have any clarity or hope that things are going to change. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was being like, where did this come from? What is causing this pain? What is this internal void that I have this propensity to try to numb and escape from? because if I can't understand where it came from, then I also can't see a clear path that it's ever going to change. And I think if veterans get stuck in that place long enough, then they can lose hope that things will change. And then their life just becomes one that they're merely trying to survive instead of really living it to their full potential. And then the last thing I'll share about this and some reflection that I've had that's helped me better understand this. So I'll just speak from my experience. So in the Marine Corps, the moment that I graduated from basic training and I was accepted the title of being a Marine and I started to wear this uniform, there was this beautiful and powerful, like uplifting sense of ego or sense of self that came from being a part of this organization and this uniform that I wore. One of the ways I think about this is like a dichotomous ego. So I understand dichotomous to be two opposing parts kind of operating in opposite directions. And ego in this sense, just our sense of identity, our sense of self, our understanding of who we are and the value that we have. So on this one hand, I had this really uplifting force of, providing a sense of value, providing a sense of worth because of this organization that I'd been allowed to become a part of. But at the same time, I recognize, at least in the Marine Corps, it was a very hyper-competitive environment. There was you were always mindful of those people that could run faster, that were getting better scores on their tests, that were advancing faster than you. You're always very mindful of that. And in this competitive environment, there's also this real, mutual pressure to help everybody else around you continue to improve and evolve and become stronger and develop new skills. So so it also creates this this kind of self-deprecating view of yourself by recognizing ways that you need to, or that you think that you need to improve. So back to this dichotomous ego, in this one sense, you put that uniform on, you have this part of your internal self that's really lifting you up and supporting your confidence, your sense of self, your personal value. But then you have this opposing force that's saying like, yeah, you're awesome, but you're not good enough yet. Like you're awesome, but you need to continue to evolve and you need to continue to strive. Well, of these two voices, this angel and this devil that we have inside of us that are defining our sense of self, which one of these two voices do you lose when you take that uniform off for the last time?
Mm-hmm.
Most often we lose that uplifting force, that positive sense of self and our sense of self-worth. But we don't often lose that self-deprecating, internal dialogue that says like, you need to be better, you need to continue to improve and evolve. So that's another major contributing factor, I think, to the mental health challenges and the identity challenges that veterans experience once they take that uniform off.
Yeah, and to kind of touch on that a little bit, you're talking about the competition and the fierceness of everything. Something I found when I hit the civilian sector after service. When I was in the service, if I failed at something, or if one of my soldiers failed at something, if I failed at something, I had someone there to lift me up, brush me off, say, hey, you can do better. You're going to do better. I'm going to help you do better. And then when I hit the civilian world, there's a lot of people out there that just want other people to fail to make themselves feel good. And that really didn't jive well with me. But
yeah, and the military is more of a unit competition. Like we want you to be better because you're a part of the unit, and it's that rising tide that raises all ships. And then out in the civilian sector, it's I'm trying to rise myself up by bringing everybody else down. It's not about me and them as part of the team, but it's about me and me, doing the best that I can so I can rise up. And if that means pointing out, or that means capitalizing on where somebody else has fallen short, then that's the individual game that's played. Yes,
very much so. Very much so. Stephen, I think we got a couple questions in there.
Yes, we do. Damn Sam 3 wants to know, what moment made you realize alcohol wasn't helping you cope anymore? Thank you for that question, Damn Sam.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it was really an evolution of my relationship with alcohol. So one of the other things that I did around that time that I was really at the rock bottom, I was in denial about the role that alcohol had in my life. And I was saying like, hey, I can control this. It's not that bad. I was becoming more mindful of some of the negative consequences of it. But I also wanted to test myself. Maybe this was that Marine, the sadistic part of being a Marine. But I say, you know what? I'm going to put this down and I'm going to test myself. And for at least 40 days, I'm not going to touch anything. And I survived that 40 days. It was through the holidays, through Marine Corps ball season. So, there was a lot of kind of triggers and reminders to me. And fortunately through that, I began to realize, become more aware of some of the cost that was happening. Also at this time, I was doing a lot of self-work. I was doing some things to help find a new sense of meaning and purpose in my life. Really the biggest shift or transition for me was when I started to do some things that helped me regain a sense of positive self-identity, helped me at least connect with myself first. So I think the first connection that we really need to facilitate and we really need to cultivate is our positive connection with us. So if we don't feel that we're worthy or deserving of connection with others, then it's very hard to establish any mutually beneficial or any nurturing relationships. So I was going through a process of reconnecting with myself. In one way to think about this, back to that lens analogy, and one way to think about this is I was being shown and I was being helped to expand that lens once again, not just merely focusing on all the things I disliked about myself and all the weaknesses and challenges and all the guilt that I carried, but also expanding that lens so I could reconnect with and value and take ownership of some of the things that were also true, some of the strengths that I had and some of the wins and successes I had in my past. But through this process, what I noticed was that as I regained this connection with myself and as I began to create a vision for my future and regain a semblance of meaning and purpose in my life, what I realized was that void began to diminish, and the sense of the cravings that I had also began to diminish, and that helped me gain that little deeper sense of awareness of the costs that alcohol or substances or other behaviors were having in my life. There's so much more to get into here. I wish we had 8 hours that we could kind of unpack all this, but I think it's a great question. And that's really what helped me see and understand that was when I had some things in my life that I was more excited about, and there were reasons I want those costs and consequences again. That's really the biggest thing that helped me change, a lot of behaviors in my life, was realizing that, yeah, it might be nice to have a drink or two tonight, but you know what? I'm so excited about the thing that I'm going to be working on tomorrow. Like, I don't want to lose any energy. What I've really come to understand about a lot of substances of misuse is that in some ways it's borrowing future joy and borrowing future energy to experience it right now. And when I started to see my relationship with alcohol in that way, then I began to appreciate more that the great time or the better time that I might have tonight is actually taking away some energy and some of my ability to invest in and experience joy from some things tomorrow. So these were some awarenesses that I began to have that really helped me change my appreciation or my relationship with alcohol and with other substances. And there was one more thing there. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Maybe it'll come back.
And I want to add something to that. I didn't realize the things that I was missing when I was drinking until I quit drinking.
That's what I was going to talk about. Thank you. So, and that's what I was going to say. These things that we use to help avoid or escape or numb some kind of sensation or emotion in us, we can't selectively numb just the bad stuff. Yeah. So we can't numb the pain. We can't just numb the remorse. We can't just numb the loneliness. We also numb our ability to experience joy and happiness and gratitude. And during this first little test that I did of this, extended fast from alcohol and from some other substances, that's one thing that I began to appreciate is, I'm able to experience, in the good times, in the middle of the day, I seem to have this little bit deeper sense of appreciation and happiness just about some, meaningless or just some kind of trivial things that I'm experiencing in my life. And when I recognize that this capacity to experience the good things began to, it wasn't atrophying anymore. It began to regrow. That also helped further my appreciation for some of the negative effects of the substances and behaviors in life. Now, I'm not for or against anybody's definition of their recovery journey or their relationship, with any kind of substance or behavior. Nor in my personal journey did I need to completely remove all substances and behaviors before I could begin my journey in recovery. Everybody's recovery journey is going to look a little bit different. I understand in America alone, there's about 38 to 40 million individuals that are experiencing a diagnosable relationship with a substance or a behavior. So experiencing a lot of negative costs, a lot of negative consequences in their life. I also understand that there's not one journey into that rock bottom or towards that rock bottom. There's not one pathway into the darkness. Every individual that has struggled with something in their life, they have their own unique pathway of experiences, of events, of circumstances, of traumas, of biology that influence their journey or that pathway into the darkness. So similarly, there's not one pathway, there's not 10, there's not 100 or 1,000 pathways out of that darkness. I think there could be as many as the 38 or 40 million unique pathways from somebody's struggle to where they want to get to. So I do run an addiction recovery residence in Eastern North Carolina. And one of the things I'm a huge proponent of is individuals finding the pathway that's best for them. Now that has to come with a caveat. And the caveat is, just because you go to try some kind of treatment, or just because you go to one variation of a support group meeting, if you're not comfortable there, you got to do some real self-reflection and decide, is it because you don't, the truth that they're sharing cuts a little too deeply? Yeah. You're just too uncomfortable to do some of the things that they're asking you to do? Or is it just that they're, what they're bringing up, their pathway, the framework for their pathway to recovery is not the right best fit for you? Because what I want for everybody is to find, first and foremost, to define what they want their life to look like. We say recovery. Sometimes that can be from substances. It can be from behaviors. It could be from some harmful habits, or some limiting beliefs, some thought habits. That recovery, I want somebody first and foremost to define what they want their recovery to look like. So I'm not a clinician, but as a recovery coach, I work with a lot of people in recovery. It's never my job to tell somebody what their life or what their recovery should look like. It's up to the individual. Everybody's journey is going to look different. Everybody's, best version of themselves is going to look a little different. It's also not up to me to prescribe or to demand or to enforce any particular pathway, so long as an individual is trying to, find what that pathway or what that journey looks like for them. So I just share that as a blanket. If there's something in your life that you don't like and you want to change it, well, go find the best tools and resources and approach out there to make the changes that you want. And you define what you want the end state to look like. And maybe as you take some steps in that direction, your desired end state changes a little bit as you become more aware of some things that you're capable of and things that are possible for you.
Yes. And I think that kind of leads us into our next question, Stephen.
Yes. Sanwell's Diego wants to know, how did mentorship change the way you approach recovery?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned, or at least alluded to, when I went out and was trying to find something to help me change my state and my experience in life, I didn't intentionally set out just to find something to help me with the substances and behaviors or the mental health conditions. And what I was introduced to was really a lot of mentoring and coaching in this field of positive psychology. And I understand, if you're not familiar with the term of positive psychology or how it differs from other psychology, I love the analogy of a hot air balloon. So if you can imagine a hot air balloon that's floating at some place, some elevation above the ground, and you want this hot air balloon to go higher, imagining now that the elevation of the hot air balloon is somehow representative of how well somebody is doing in their life. So if the hot air balloon sinks down, then they're into the darkness. They're struggling a little bit more. If that hot air balloon goes higher, then that means that they're flourishing or they're thriving more in their life. They're more successful in their life. Well, if we want to increase the elevation of this hot air balloon, there's really two different ways that we can do it. First thing is that we can find any weights that are attached to the basket, and we can cut some sandbags, we can toss some weight out of the basket, and as that load lightens, it will naturally be able to lift higher into the sky. The other way that we can help the hot air balloon go higher is simply by turning on the burner, by putting some more heat in the hot air balloon and creating some more lift so that it can get to a higher place. So I share this analogy because this is the way that I understand the difference between traditional psychology and positive psychology. Traditional psychology, from my understanding, is really a pathological look at the things that are holding somebody down. What are the diseases? What are the symptoms? What are the diagnoses? What are the weights or the sandbags that are holding this individual down and preventing them from experiencing a better version of their life? Positive psychology really looks at an individual through a different lens. It doesn't say what's wrong with you. It says what's right with you. What are the things that are going well? What are the innate strengths that you have? What are the things that you've done well or that have expressed well in other areas of your life? And how can we capitalize on that to make some growth and progress in other areas of your life? I also like this analogy because it makes it very clear on how a support system or a pathway that addresses both of these. If we want to get as high as we want, as possible into the sky, then why don't we address kind of both of these? So what I was really introduced to through my mentorship was this positive psychology approach. It was helping reconnect me with the worth and the value that I had inside of me as an individual. It helped me zoom out that lens and not just see my defects and see my flaws and the mistakes that I've made in my past, but to also recognize and take ownership of the things that were good and also true about me. Some of the many wins and successes I've had in my life, some of the innate strengths that I've had. And this began to expand my, kind of my perspective. First, my relationship with myself, and then it helped me see myself as somebody who is worthy and capable of having a sense of meaning and purpose in my life again. So I began to envision that. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what the original question was, but I hope that that was the idea that came to mind. I hope that it effectively answered it. Was it defining my pathway to recovery? Yeah. So back to this analogy, the positive and traditional psychology. So if you think of somebody who helps an individual with mental health conditions or substance related conditions, we typically think of clinicians. So counselors, therapists, psychiatrists. These individuals, they from my understanding, they more work in the traditional psychology realm. It's helping identify somebody what's wrong with them, and then what can we do to mitigate some of these negative things that are holding you down or holding you back. And positive psychology really looks at the other side of it. So this is what's really helped change my understanding of recovery or my perception of recovery as a non-clinical mental health provider. So as a recovery coach or other individuals or peer support specialists really operating in this non-clinical realm of supporting an individual, I understand that it's my belief in the work that I do, it's necessary and it's mandatory to look at that positive psychology lens to help somebody expand on and leverage and capitalize on the good things that they have in them. Because the way I see it, if that hot air balloon is sitting on the ground, if that basket is laying on the deck and there's no upward lift, there's no upward force created, you can do all of the clinical and the pathological treatment that you want. If there's nothing lifting that individual up, then it's always going to be sitting on the ground. So I think it's very necessary to at least focus on both aspects of an individual's life experience and their recovery journey. I've got some books, and I'll share a link here to some resources on my website. But one of the books that I published, it was a really short workbook, and it's called The First Steps to Thriving in Recovery. And this really brings this positive psychology lens to that recovery experience. And one of the reasons that I created it, and some of the people that have enjoyed it the most, are either clinicians that work with individuals in recovery or sponsors that are working with, a sponsee in their recovery journey. Because a common message that I hear and a common frustration that a lot of sponsors have is they say, hey, I've been working with this guy, I've been working with this girl, and they just get stuck. Like they're just not able to keep progressing. Yep. And my question is, oh, let me guess, they're stuck on the fourth step. They're stuck on identifying all of their defects and all of the mistakes that they've made in their life. And they, of course, they're like, yeah, how'd you know that? I say, okay, well, let's imagine this individual's journey in recovery. They're often at the worst place that they've ever been in their life, mentally and emotionally, when they hit that rock bottom. Once they make that step and they have this desire to change. If you've got zero self-esteem and zero sense of self-worth and zero confidence in who you are and what you're capable of, and you see yourself in a horrible light, how much capacity do you have to continue to cut deeper into your sense of self-identity and continue to point out more defects and more challenges? So I say that because for this so one of the first exercises I always introduce to somebody on a recovery journey is I sit down with them. I say, okay, make a list for me of 100 wins and successes that you've had in your life. The normal response I get is like deer in the headlights. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm 30, I'm 40 years old. Obviously I haven't had 100 wins or successes or I wouldn't be here. Well, to me, that's a litmus test that tells me where their mindset is and kind of how much they're struggling internally with their sense of self-identity. Because I don't care how many mistakes that you've made in your life. I don't care if you're 10 years old or 40 years old or 100 years old. You haven't just had 100 wins and successes in your life. You've had tens of thousands, especially if we're willing to give ourselves credit and recognize a win and success in our life that is so seemingly insignificant or small in magnitude, but is of equal magnitude of a mistake that I made last week that I'm willing to carry over myself for the next couple of weeks. if we can begin to make this shift and focus not just on the things that we dislike about ourselves, and it's very important and valuable work to make a list of things that you would like to change about yourself. But if we're not also looking at the other side and recognizing, reconnecting with the worth and the strength that we have, then you're going to limit your available progress in your recovery journey. So that's been a big shift for me on how I understand the recovery journey. The whole name of it is we're trying to recover something that we lost. Well, we're not trying to recover more shame and more guilt and more self-doubt. We're trying to recover a positive identity, a positive sense of self, confidence in who we are, and a greater sense of self-worth. That's what we're trying to recover. So the approach that I take and the work that I do really focuses on that, what I believe is the most direct path to this. And then the last thing about recovery that's really changed my understanding, I used to think that the word sobriety and recovery were synonymous. I've since come to understand that they're vastly different concepts and have and not that one's right or wrong, but there's some things to be mindful of and consider with how you attribute, an individual's journey. So I understand sobriety simply to be a term that is used to describe the last time that you used a certain substance or behavior. I understand recovery to indicate the time when you as an individual decided that you were going to do something to take positive control of your life and make a positive change. I think, at least in my mind, in my recovery journey, I much prefer focusing on one person's recovery and not on their sobriety, because I understand for a lot of individuals, they're going to have some setbacks. They're going to have some challenges. I don't want somebody to lose all the progress that they've made because they've had an episode of return to use. I don't want somebody to feel like they're back at step one and to completely ignore all of the progress that they've made in their recovery journey along the way. So to me, I always focus on and I talk about recovery because to me, that's the more important indicator of somebody's journey or somebody's path.
Yes, and I'm glad that you outlined the difference between sobriety and recovery. That's a big one. And Stephen, I think we got another question in there.
Got a couple more in there. Admasucks9 wants to know, what makes ValiantPath different from traditional addiction programs? Thank you.
You read my mind. I was going to ask that.
Great question. I'm just going to take a stab here and say War Eagle. I don't know if that's what the tag there was referencing, but I got a graduate degree from Auburn, so good stuff. Awesome. I feel like I'm part of my tribe. I think I answered that in kind of my last soapbox moment there. But the big difference is it focuses on it comes from a positive psychology lens. Not just the coaching that I do, but some of the programming that I developed. Most recently, I was invited down to Georgia to develop some really wellness and resilience programming for justice-involved veterans. And the reason that I talk about wellness and resilience as opposed to addiction or suicide prevention or mental health challenges, for one, from a non-clinical lens, like I can't identify and I can't prescribe labels to anybody. So I don't care where they are or what their past has been through. That's not a focus for me. Well, just like I said, what I want to help individuals do is recover something that they lost. To me, I understand a lot of times that's the loss of the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you see yourself, the innate value or the inherent value that you think that you have. I want to help individuals recover that. So that's, I guess, maybe one major common difference. Now, there are some recovery or addiction recovery pathways out there that don't demand or require abstinence as the very first step. So it's not unique in that regard, though many do, which I think is, from my perspective at least, I think it's kind of silly to require somebody to abstain from the thing, from the diagnosis that they have. They have to prove that they're over it before they're able to access a lot of the care and services that are available. Again, I can understand. I guess I can understand where that comes from and why, but it seems a little silly to me. Somebody wouldn't walk into a doctor and say, "Hey, I've got diabetes or I've got high blood pressure," and they make you fix your diabetes or high blood pressure before they begin to treat you. A little bit of a rant there. So that's the difference. And then coming from that positive psychology approach. So I don't care I don't care how long the list is of things that you dislike about yourself or the defects that you can identify or the weaknesses that you're mindful of or the long list of diagnoses that you may or may not have. I care about the positive traits in you. What are the innate strengths that you have? What is the value that you have? How can I help remind you or reconnect you with that value and that worth as an individual? And then once we begin to reestablish that vision, then what can we do to accelerate that progress? So positive psychology is also often described or talked about or offered through the PERMA framework. So PERMA is just an acronym that stands for positivity and emotional resilience. The E is engagement. The R is relationships. The M, it stands for meaning. And then A is achievement. So there's many other things that we can get into to help accelerate that progress by helping you re-engage with things that are meaningful, re-engaging through the lens of your strengths, not through the avoidance of your weaknesses, reestablishing positive and nurturing relationships, first and foremost with yourself. And then how do you bring that version of yourself that you want to be forward to the other relationships that you have so you can cultivate the best relationships to support you? How do we, let's see, M, so meaning. So one last thing I'll mention about meaning. So meaning is the pathway that talks about meaning and purpose. And how do we cultivate? How do we experience it? We've already talked about how profound a need meaning is in somebody's life. So what can we do to experience more meaning in our life, especially in a journey in recovery, especially if you've been numbing and avoiding all of the positive things in your life? How do you begin to experience and capitalize on the emotions of joy once again? How do you leverage some of the other kind of pro-recovery benefits that you get from having a sense of meaning in your life? And then lastly, achievement. It's like, okay, we've got all these things. Now, how do we actually achieve the things that we want to achieve in our life? The last thing I was reminded of about meaning is one of the ways that we experience meaning in our life is through coherence. So in Dr. Viktor Frankl's work, he talks about different ways that we can experience meaning. And in the first definition, or the first way, he describes having a coherence. And this word really jumped out at me. And what I understand and what I believe he's getting to is we can experience meaning in our life when there's coherence between who we are and the skills that we've developed and what the role or what the situation requires of us. If you've spent many years developing culinary skills and you're a master chef in the kitchen, then when you're required to demonstrate or utilize those skills, you can experience a sense of meaning in your life.
Yes.
Look at a veteran who spent their entire adult life developing a certain and unique skill set and abilities and capacities to perform in a certain way and do a certain or a specific job. If you now transition out and now you find yourself in another role or without a role in the civilian world, and you have no mechanism, you have no opportunity to display or demonstrate the skills and the talents and the abilities that you've developed, that in of itself can rupture that sense of meaning that somebody has in their life. Now, it doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. I think there's a lot of ways that we can reapply the strengths and the skills that we've developed in the military. We just need to bring some intention to that and be intentional about, okay, these are some things that I developed in the military. Now, without a role that requires them in that way, I've lost a sense of meaning. But how do I bring the attention to detail? How do I bring that level of intensity to service in this new role or this new opportunity or experience in my life?
Yes. Yeah, because the big thing is there's a lot of infantrymen out there that when they get out, they're like, I know how to do infantry stuff. Now, how can I transition that to whatever I'm going to do with my life now? Right.
It can be the same skill set, the root, skill or the ability that you developed. It can be applied in many different ways, but if it's not going to be so, it's not going to be as crystal clear. That level of intensity or the level of attention to detail that you develop that makes you a great operator and helps you see and spot threats that are anywhere around and notice any little thing, nuanced thing that might be out of place. That has a tremendous value too in the civilian world. It's just not going to be in the same application, but you can take that same skill, that same trait that you developed, and map it in a new way to a new role or a new position.
Yes. Stephen, you want to pop that next question up here?
Yeah, sure. At Malik, Drew Terry wants to know, what do you hope people, especially other veterans, take away from your story? Thank you for the question, Malik.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. So when I did the TEDx talk, really there was two reasons I did it. Well, the first one was really I wanted to help plant a seed and connect veterans with this message of this the experience of transitioning from the military. Like I said, one of the hardest things that we can experience is when we wake up in pain and we have no idea where the heck it came from. So I at least wanted to plant a seed in the veteran's mind. So if they did begin to experience some of that darkness or some of that struggle, that they had a framework to understand that they were just going through a natural human experience. There's a clear reason why they're struggling and why they're suffering. And if they can understand that, then it can be much easier to see that there's a clear pathway or there's a reason to have hope that things can change and things can be better. The other reason I shared that message was really to help connect the non-veteran audience with that veteran experience. I've seen that there's this stereotype or there's this understanding, maybe culturally wide, that if a veteran is experiencing mental health challenges or struggling with a substance, then, that must stem to something that they experienced on the battlefield. Of course, that the veteran has PTSD because he, experienced some horrific thing on the battlefield. Well, while sadly that is true for some veterans, it's not true for most veterans. There's many more veterans that never leave the wire, that don't get into, a gunfight, that don't see a roadside bomb explode. Yet most veterans have some version of this traumatic experience when they transition from the military. So I wanted to share some insight to, the wider audience so that they could better understand and connect with. There's a lot of individuals that aren't veterans that always ask me, how do they connect more with that veteran if they don't understand anything they've been through? So that was the other purpose of this TEDx talk, was to help map or help demonstrate how the veteran experience, though it is unique, that it is a veteran transition, a veteran experience, the human emotions that they're feeling and the human needs that they have, those aren't unique. We all have these needs for connection, for authenticity, and for meaning. So I wanted to provide, again, a lens or a framework with which individuals could see and understand some of that internal struggle that veterans go through in a way that they can, map it to maybe something in their own life. We all understand how nice it is to feel a sense of belonging and feel like we're connected. We all understand how nice it is to have a sense of meaning. So even if you haven't been in the service yourself, there's some things in your own life experience that I think you can map it to get a better appreciation or understanding of that veteran.
Okay. And, that's what our mission statement is here, is helping other veterans. And, we've been through it, and we want to help everybody out. We want to shrink those numbers that are coming in on the bad side.
Right.
I don't think we have any more questions, do we, Stephen?
No, sir.
We do not.
Man, I was just getting going. I thought we had another hour.
I tell you what, we could sit here and we could talk. I think what you're doing is just amazing. So we're going to go ahead and cover it. Now, what if somebody wants to reach out to you? How can somebody reach out to you, and how can somebody get your books? And I want to, first of all, when he puts his website up there and tells us how we can get in touch with him, go to that website, listen to that TEDx talk. That was probably the most powerful 10 minutes that I have listened to in a long time. And Garrett, I thought it was amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that it connected with somebody. Sometimes we have a message inside of us, and and I just believe I was the conduit to relay that message to the world. So when I hear that it was received, then I just feel like I did my a good job as the steward of that message, and was help get it out there.
It was a message that needed to be put out there, and you did wonderful. So how do we get in contact with you, or how does the Misfit Nation get in contact with you if they want to read some of your books or get some of your services?
Yeah, great question. So I just put a link in the chat. I know that's internal here, but if you want to put that in the scroll, or if you want to share that. So yeah, there you go. So just GarrettBiss.com. And then I created a special link for the audience where you can go to /show notes. And there's some of the resources. There's one on there that I want to point out. It's right there, that Veterans in Recovery series. And actually, I'll put another link here, and I'll try to share it in the comments when we get off of this. But for anybody who is kind of recovery curious or knows a veteran that's in recovery, one of the things I often hear from veterans is that the treatment, the support groups they're going to, the things that are shared with them, that doesn't really seem to map very well to their experience. So I created a short series that's called Veterans in Recovery, where I talk about some of the unique things, not only the unique challenges, but also the unique opportunities that veterans have that are seeking recovery. So it's a free playlist. Anybody can view it on YouTube. It's 8 videos in total. Each one's maybe the longest one's 5 minutes. So very kind of accessible and digestible message there. But it's called Veterans in Recovery. If you were to scroll to the top of that notes page, you'll see a link to it up there, a button that you can click on to go find it.
Okay.
There it is right there.
All righty. That looks all right.
And please, if any other questions come in after this, or there anything comes up in the future that you want to talk about, anybody in the audience, if there's something that an idea or a question that came to you today, and you want to reach out and have more conversation about it, please do. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so if you're going to send me a DM, that's probably the best place to do it. And certainly, check out my website, or you can send me a message through there as well. But anything I can do to help bring some light and bring some hope back to the veteran community, or answer questions for non-veterans that have a veteran loved one, I'm always happy to do it.
All right. Now I got a tough question for you.
What you got?
This is one question in 3 parts, and we ask this of all of our guests. What are 3 things that are non-negotiable that Garret has to do every day, or your day is not complete?
That's a great question. So I've been on this cold plunge fix for about the last 18 months. So every morning I get up, and one of the first things I do in the morning is I step into my tub. It's right now about 38 degrees, and I spend 3 minutes in there. Every morning I hate it. Every morning I try to come up with an excuse why not to do it. And every morning when I get out, I feel like I just had 3 cups of coffee and a full endorphin and flood rush. Interesting thing I read about this kind of cold exposure. They say that the increase or the flood of dopamine that you have in your body after a period of cold exposure like this is equivalent to the increase in dopamine that one would experience from cocaine. The difference is, and I'll admittedly, I don't have experience with cocaine, though no judgment against anybody that does. But from what I understand, that's a very short spike of dopamine that might last 15, 20 minutes. Whereas the benefits that you get from the cold plunge can last 4 to 6 hours. So one of the things I've noticed the most, and this comes back to that anxiety piece, what I understand happens in this miserable experience where I get in the cold plunge, it's kind of taking my resilience. If you think of your resilience as a rubber band, it's really taking it and stretching it to the max. But then when I get out, it allows it to reset. It allows me to recenter. It really brings me back to the center of my zone of tolerance, so that, kind of resetting that stress state. So any stress that might have been accumulating, coming up in my life, it really diminishes that. And not only that, it really strengthens this rebound muscle. So I was driving, I have a 99 Jeep Wrangler, and I was driving one hot morning last summer, and my 3-year-old son was in the back seat. And as I was driving along, he caught my attention. So I looked behind me real quick. I looked up, and there's this Corvette that decided to stop and make a left turn on a double yellow line. Caught me completely off guard. I slammed on the brakes. My whole Jeep slid. I didn't touch them, but I left 4 skid marks on the pavement on that road. As I left that, I began to drive forward, and I was just waiting for this flood of adrenaline and these endorphins. But what I realized about 2 minutes later, I never experienced that. I felt as calm as I was sitting there reading a book on the beach on a nice summer afternoon. So one of the things that I've come to appreciate only through that experience was the things that would naturally kind of trigger me or really, set me into that fight or flight state. I have a much greater tolerance for resilience against some of those normal triggers. So for that and many other reasons, I highly recommend that. So that's the first non-negotiable. The second non-negotiable is trying to get some form of exercise. And admittedly, right now, what that looks like for me is about 10 to 15 minutes of a little stair stepper in my garage, or some exercise bands that I just try to get the muscles and body moving with. Let's see. A third thing, I guess, would be water. And I could come back and have a whole nother episode about water and talk about the nonprofit that I've done, some water work, but I certainly value that. And then a 4 and 5 probably be nicotine, caffeine, any other things that help with brain function and neuroplasticity and those sorts of things. But certainly cold plunge, a little bit of exercise, and I think I'll say the third one's definitely connection. So connection with yourself, connection with something in your life that reminds you of the worth and the value that we have. We live in a pretty difficult society, pretty difficult life experience. There's a lot of things out there that are trying to tell us that we're not good enough just as we are. One statistic I heard was that there's about $7 trillion spent every year on marketing and advertising. So with billboards, with radio ads, with social media ads, just all this money spent. And I think really at the end of the day, there's one core message that every ad is trying to relay to you. And somehow or in some way, you're not good enough unless you were to spend your money on this thing. So whether we're aware of it or not, we're inundated with constantly reminders or suggestions that we're just not good enough and lovable just as we are. So I think we need some kind of daily practice or reminder of some of that worth and some of the value that we do have.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, hey, this kind of flew by.
That was the fastest 10 minutes of my life.
You're going to get off here later and you'll be like, did I just do a podcast?
That's right. I probably will.
Hey, we really enjoyed having you on here, Garrett. And I want to put a message out to the Misfit Nation. Hey, if you're out there listening to us tonight and that darkness is creeping up on you, it happens to a lot of us. There's help out there. You get on that telephone, you pick it up, you dial 988. If you're a veteran, hit option 1. There's somebody on that other end of that line that's going to help you. If you don't want to do that, call a friend. Call a friend, tell them your problem. If you don't want to do that, contact us at the Misfit Nation. You can contact Stephen at themisfitnation.com, Jake at themisfitnation.com, or info@themisfitnation.com. Drop your phone number in there. We will get in touch with you, and we will do our darndest to get you the help that you need, because Misfit Nation, tomorrow will not be as beautiful without you in it.
Amen.
Amen. Parting shot, Stephen?
Well, don't forget, we are live Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Not you and I, but the Misfit Nation. And don't forget to check us out on Reach Across America, Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. You always get your fix. Misfit Nation, plug here, plug here, plug here.
Hey, we thank y'all for joining us tonight, and we love you. And until next Tuesday.
Garrett, thank you.
Thank you again, Garrett. And hey,
thank you so much.
Hang out a minute.
Appreciate you guys.
Hang out a minute after we cut out of here.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.
Two kinds of phishing out here. One for fish, one for your data. Hackers try to hook you, but Cisco Duo keeps every user and device protected. Cisco Duo. Phishing season is over. Learn more at duo.com.
Business owners, game day isn't just another shift. It's your biggest opportunity. What you show on your screens decides where fans stay. EverPass brings premium live sports together in one streaming platform built for businesses, so you can deliver the games your customers want without the hassle. Reliable, easy to manage, and designed for your venue. Make your place the one fans choose. Visit everpass.com to learn more.